Hello, fifth grade. We are going to talk about your language assignment for today, Friday. Now, you are going to be completing pages 288, 289, and 290. Now, this is reviewing everything that we just learned over the last week or so. Okay, it starts off with, I want to remind you about direct object. A direct object is a noun or pronoun that actually follows the action verb and it receives the action from the verb. It answers the question what or whom is getting that action, okay? So let me rephrase that one more time. Remember, it says like, Tyler found his dog. Well, found is our action verb, and what did he find? He found the dog. So the dog is the direct object, okay? Then we have our indirect object. Now, our indirect object is a noun or a pronoun that is located between the action verb and the direct object of the sentence. Now, it tells to whom or for whom or to what or for what the action verb is done. So let me give you an example. I sent my mother a birthday card. Now we know that our verb is sent and we know that I sent, but we're wondering, what did I send? Okay, and I sent the birthday card, right? So that gives me the direct object. But then we want to know, to whom did I give the card to? Well, I gave it to mother. So mother is then our indirect object because it's receiving that direct object of what was given, right? Okay, now remember linking verbs. Linking verbs are different than action verbs. Action verbs are the ones where you can put I in front of it. It's showing the action, okay? But we also have linking verbs. Now remember, state of being verbs are linking verbs. So am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. Yay, I did it that time. Okay, so that is our linking verbs. But we also have a box of linking verbs that could be taste, feel, smell, sound, look, appear, become, seem, grow, remain, or stay. Now, those are also sometimes linking verbs. Now, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, is it an action, right? Or if it's not an action, then you know it's going to be one of those linking verbs. Now, predicate nominative is a noun or a pronoun that follows that linking verb and it renames the subject, okay? So, Robert is my cousin. Remember, we're renaming Robert cousin, okay? Just like Mrs. Lawler is a teacher. Teacher, I'm renaming Mrs. Lawler teacher. That is predicate nominative, okay? Okay, now we're on to predicate adjective, okay? Now, predicate adjective is an adjective complement that follows a linking verb and it describes the subject. So remember, this is describing. So you've got to ask yourself, is it renaming or is it describing? So here's an example. The sky is blue, right? Blue is describing the sky. So we know that blue is our predicate adjective. What about the cookie tastes good? Now we have good is what the cookie is tasting, right? So that's receiving, it's following that linking verb, and that's modifying, telling us how the cookie is. It's describing the cookie. So that means it's the predicate adjective. Okay, so when you're reviewing the complements, which is on page 288 on think, okay, the first part, it says put two lines under your verb and put one line under your subject. Then it says circle and label the 22 complements. It's giving it to you there, okay, guys? The complements could be a direct object, an indirect object, a predicate nominative, or predicate adjective. So you're going to have to ask yourself those questions. What or whom, to whom, or for what, for whom, all those questions that I just reviewed, and ask yourself also, are they describing or is it renaming? So that's where you have to find this out. So let's go ahead and do number one. It says Paul Bunyan was the best lumberjack in the northern woods. Okay, so what is our verb? Was, right. And who was? Paul Bunyan, right. So if Paul Bunyan was, what was Paul Bunyan? He was a lumberjack, you're right. So what did lumberjack do? It renamed Paul Bunyan. So you should circle lumberjack and put predicate nominative, PN, above lumberjack. Do you see what we're doing here? Same thing you guys have been doing. I have confidence you're going to be able to do these on your own. Now you have 21 left to do on your own. I want you to read look closely box. It says, just as verbs and subjects may be compound, complements might be compound too. We haven't seen any of those yet. Okay, study the examples below. So it says a compound direct object. I saw a giraffe, an elephant, and a polar bear at the zoo. Okay, great. So our verb is saw, and who saw? I saw. And what did I see? I saw a giraffe, an elephant, polar bear. Those are all the direct objects, which gives us the compound direct objects. Makes sense? Okay. How about compound indirect object? Okay. Grandma wrote Nicole and me a letter. Okay. So wrote is our verb. Who did the writing? Grandma. And what did she write? Letter. Letter's our direct object. And to whom did she write the letter to? She wrote it to Nicole and I. That is our indirect objects, and that would be compound. Okay? Then we have compound predicate nominative. The winners of a cracker eating contest were Luke and Justin. Okay, so what was the verb? Were. And who were? Winners. Okay? And what were they, who were the winners? Okay, they were Luke and Justin. Okay, well, what happens there is we just renamed the winners. We gave them the name of Luke and Justin, right? Okay, so that would be predicate nominative because we renamed, and that was two of them, meaning compound predicate nominative. Then we have compound adjective, a predicate adjective. So everything looked green and fresh after the spring rain. Everything looked green and fresh after the spring rain. So our verb is looked, right? And at what looked? Everything. So that's our subject. Now, what did they look like? Well, they looked green and fresh, right? So green, fresh are our predicate adjectives because it's describing how everything looked. So that was our look closely box. Now we're on to page 289, reviewing some more complements. Now you're going to do Think A on your own, and that says label the verb AV for action. We just went over that. LV for linking verb, the S for subject, and all of the complements, direct object, indirect object, predicate nominative, predicate adjective in the following sentences. Okay, so there's going to be something in each of them. You're always going to have a subject and you're always going to have a verb in every sentence. You just got to decide if that verb is the linking verb on the lists or if it's an action verb showing the action. Then you got to find out if you have your direct object, and then if there's an indirect object, because you can't have an indirect object without a direct object, okay? Then you got to find out if you have any, if you have the linking verb ones. Remember, linking verb ones only have a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. So then ask yourself those questions. Is something renaming the subject or something describing the subject? And that will help you complete page 289. Now, I will go ahead and probably want to check some of these with you at some point. So after you complete this, and it may be after spring break, I will go ahead and check some of these with you. On page 289, we have at the bottom, Think B, okay? So this is insert your quotation marks. That is showing when someone talks, right? Our little quotation marks. And a comma, okay, which is listing things. All of our comma rules, remember all the comma rules, okay? Apostrophes, showing contractions or possession. And then our end marks. Now remember, when you have quotation marks, right, and the quote, The quote is separate from something. Now that's going to be separate by either a comma or the end mark. So you've got to remember that in that sense, okay? And our end marks also would be any period, exclamation mark, or question mark. So if we were to do number 1, it says, who wrote Huckleberry Finn? Beth asked Daniel. Okay, so we already know that Daniel's talking here, right? So we need to make sure that we're separating that. We have to separate that with quotation marks, right? And our quotation marks are going to be on who wrote Huckleberry Finn, Beth. So quotation marks around before who and after Beth. Now, didn't he just, Daniel ask Beth a question? Yep, so we have a question mark. But where does the question mark go? Before the quotations or after the quotations? It goes before. So you got to put that right next to Beth, right? Then we also have something unique. He's talking to somebody. So that's a direct address. How do we separate the direct address in a sentence? We use a comma. So you should be putting a comma after Finn and before Beth. Now take a look at the end of our sentence. This was a question, but then it was also a sentence saying that Daniel asked that question. So at the end of the sentence, you need to put a period. Awesome. So this is number 1 on Think B. And now going forward, you're going to go ahead and complete 2 through 10 on your own. And the next section after that is Think C. Now, all you're doing with Think C is if there's no error in the verb, the pronoun, or the modifier usage, then you're going to write correct in the blank. But if there is an error, underline it and then write it on the right correction on the blank. Okay? Then you'll go ahead and complete Think C. And okay, on page 290 down at the bottom, there is also Write D. And yes, I do want you to do Write D this time. What it's doing is it's asking you to use linking verbs, action verbs, predicate nominatives, predicate adjectives, all these things we've been going over, and put them into sentence form. So I'd like you to get a sheet of paper, and I'd like you to write out the sentences for that section, and you're going to also turn that in with your packet on April 6th, okay? Great, thanks.